Smoked pastrami steak? Now it's not clickbait, it is a real process. I came up with this recipe a few years ago because I really wanted pastrami and I just didn't have the time or the fridge space to make it. So I figured why not try to mimic almost all of the flavors and put it into some steak. So here we go. So to make a steak taste like pastrami, we need two things. We need smoke, I got that covered outside, and we need a good pastrami rub. Now normally pastrami is brined for days in curing salt, so the meat's already pretty salty, so we're gonna have to add the salt onto the steak and create that rub. The rub's pretty easy, so follow along with me. You're gonna need a spice grinder. This is like a coffee bean grinder / spice grinder. This is gonna make a pretty decent amount of rub. You might get 2 or 3 pretty good sized steaks out of it, so just bear with me. We're gonna start with 3 tablespoons of black peppercorns. All right, 2 tablespoons of coriander seeds. We've got 1/2 teaspoon of fennel seeds. And then the rest of the ingredients we're actually gonna mix by hand because we don't need those to be ground up here. So we're gonna grind these up. Oh, and you might be wondering, why aren't I just using ground fennel, ground coriander? It's really because the texture of grinding up these whole spices is what really makes pastrami. You gotta have some of that nice coarse bark on there. All right, so let's grind it up. All right, this is looking pretty good. Now these smell amazing, and grinding fresh spices like this adds not only that coarse texture that you really want, but it does give it a better flavor. And then what we're gonna do is mix this with a little bit of paprika. I just use a teaspoon. We've got 1 teaspoon granulated garlic, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And this is optional, but it's chilies and smoke, so I'm gonna add a 1/2 teaspoon of chili flakes. And then we're gonna mix this up. Just really get in here to make sure I got all that brown sugar broken up. Now through testing, I really found out that this blend just works well with basically making a smoked steak. Now some pastrami recipes use more or less ingredients. Some will use mustard seeds. They won't use brown sugar, but trust me, the combo of the salt and just that little bit of sweet really works with this recipe. All right, so we've got the rub, we've got the salt. Let's go get the steak. All right, so today I'm gonna use this on a tri-tip steak. Now you can use this on any kind of steak that you want that's thick. Really needs to be about 1.5 inches thick at least. This tri-tip is about 3 pounds, so I'm going to go ahead and salt it. And I like to salt about a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt per pound. Now I will typically go a little bit more for this type of a process, just because we want that saltiness that you'd normally get from pastrami. So I'm gonna salt this first, kind of rub that in, and then we're gonna add the rub on top. Now I do this because I don't like to mix the pastrami like rub ingredients in with the salt because every steak is a little different. And for this recipe, I just found that salting it first makes the most sense because it allows you to be just really consistent as you need to with each of your steaks. If you want, you could totally use a mustard binder. That would be really appropriate for something like this, but I am going to actually let this rest for a couple hours prior to smoking. It'll give us a better crust too. Okay, so we salted the tri-tip. Now we're gonna add a generous amount. Don't be shy. Remember, this is not gonna make it more salty. It's just gonna give it a nice dark, peppery crust that you'd really want in a pastrami. This rub also tastes good on turkey and chicken, believe it or not, if you wanna try that too. Really, really great flavor, and then you don't have to, brine anything. Make sure you get all the edges too. We're pretty much good to go. I think I've pat this enough. You can see that I have at least half of the pastrami rub left, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep this in an airtight container and I'll use it next time. So the best way to get smoke to adhere to a steak like this and get the crispiest part is to let this dry brine. So I'm actually gonna pop this in the fridge for a few hours. I recommend doing it even overnight if you can. And then we'll pull it out, get the smoker fired up. So I'll go store it right now. All right, I'm back. This has been resting in the fridge, uncovered for about 2 hours now. So let's go ahead and get it on the smoker. I've got it preheated at 225 degrees. All right, so I'm gonna get the tri-tip on here. I'm gonna put the thicker part towards the hotter part of my smoker. And then we're gonna cook this basically until it's done. So right now I'm cooking 225 to get as much smoke flavor as possible. And then once it hits about that 120 mark, I'll crank it up, sear it off. I like to have mine just a little bit closer from medium rare towards medium. That's just how I like my tri-tip, so it's not so chewy, but you'll see. I'll be back in a bit. All right, it's been a little over an hour. All right, the bark looks nice. You could tell the seasoning's obviously nice and set in, nothing's really flaking off. I've tempted a couple times. We're sitting right about that 118, 120 mark, kind of in the middle there. So I turned up the heat of my smoker to 350, and I'm just gonna lower it to this bottom grate here. I'm gonna sear it off until it's about 130, then we'll pull it off and bring it inside. All right, I just brought it in. It smells incredible, just like pastrami. And as you can see, it's got a great dark and crusty bark. Check that out. It's hard to believe it's not actually pastrami. It's really just that awesome rub and the smoke. Since I technically reverse seared it, I don't need to let it rest, but it is really hot and I want to toast up some bread so we can make some sandwiches. So I'll toast up the bread, we'll slice into this and we'll get it stacked. All right, we're going right down the middle. Let's see that money shot. Oh yeah, that's looking real nice. It's hard to see on camera. Definitely hit medium rare in the middle here. You can see that there's a smoke ring on the outside, especially right over here. That's the flavor that we're gonna really want with that pastrami steak. As this sits, you'll see that the color is gonna get a little bit more red too. Check out the other side for good measure. Yeah, that's looking awesome. But we still have that super smoky, crusty bark on the outside too, so this is gonna taste great. All right, I'm gonna try to cut some thin slices. And just like with any tri-tip, it's super tender. And I like it cooked this way because any more rare and it kind of gets a little chewy, especially if we're gonna make it for sandwiches. I like it to just pull apart just like that. We know tri-tip's super tender. It's got exactly that flavor that I'm really looking for. Oh man, it's just really hard to beat because while I know that you don't have that briny flavor on here, you still get all of the smoke, the saltiness, that nice peppery and spiced bark, and it's so nice and tender. All right, I'm gonna slice up a few more. I'll make a sandwich and we'll taste that too. We'll toast some Jewish rye and start there. I'm a spicy mustard guy, so I'm gonna go for that instead of that Thousand Island or Russian dressing. Then we'll go ahead and pile on this tri-tip pastrami. Get this fully loaded. I am hungry. You could put some pickles on here too, but I do love sauerkraut. I don't have Swiss, but I did have some smoked Gouda, so we're gonna be using that. That looks mighty fine. Smoked Gouda, some spicy mustard, sauerkraut, pastrami steak. I mean, come on. Now that's a steak sandwich. All right, enough jibber jabber. Time for the taste. The classic influencer reaction. Oh my gosh, dude. Satisfied guy. Pastrami steak is so good, and the best part is it doesn't take me 5 days to cure, smoke, do all those things. You can get most of those flavors within a shorter period of time and make something really delicious like this in just an afternoon. I'm telling you, if you haven't tried this process before, you gotta give it a shot. I mean, at the very least, you're gonna get a really flavorful steak, but I promise, it is very much like pastrami, minus that cure. Hope you guys like this recipe. Let me know in the comments if you try it out. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.